Jackson's Corps and win a great Confederate victory for Robert E. Lee, but then he gets wounded in the back of the legs. Again, he misses out on his chance for glory, and eventually, Jeb Stuart, the eyes of the Army of Northern Virginia, would command Jackson's troops and win that great victory for Robert E. Lee at Chancellorsville. But then, the week would go by, Jackson would develop pneumonia. May 10th at 3:15 that afternoon. It is a Sunday. Jackson always wanted to die on the Sabbath. So at 3:15, while his wife is with him and members of his staff, Jackson's mind would go towards the battlefield. And he would call out, "Order! A.P. Hill to prepare for action!" He would look towards the heavens and he would call out, "Let us cross over the river and rest under the shade of the tree." Jackson is dead. No more will the mighty Stonewall lead men into battle. How is Robert E. Lee going to replace the mighty Stonewall? Finally, Lee would come up with a three-corps system. He would keep Lieutenant General James Longstreet, commander of the First Corps. He would promote Richard Ewell to Lieutenant General, commander of Jackson's old Second Corps. And A.P. Hill now will become Lieutenant General, commander of a newly formed Third Corps. And so now, with Robert E. Lee, 75,000 men of the Army of Northern Virginia, Lee will move up. He will bring this war to a close. He will encounter those Yankee forces in federal territory, not in Maryland, but in Pennsylvania. The very land that we're on right now, ladies and gentlemen, July 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, the battle will rage between Robert E. Lee and the Army of Northern Virginia of 75,000 men against George Meade and close to 98,000 men of the Army of the Potomac. The battle will be initiated early on the morning of July 1st. Hill was ready to lead his men into town, but early that morning, he gets sick. Again, Hill misses out on his chance for glory. So the battle will rage, the 1st, the 2nd, and the 3rd at Gettysburg. Hill was ready to take command of his men on the 3rd, because he knew the plan of having those 15,000 Confederates on that magnificent charge, which would be known as Pickett's Charge. But 2/3 of those men belong to A.P. Hill. So truly, you must call it the Pickett, Pettigrew, Trumbull Charge, because the men on the Pettigrew and Trumbull belong to A.P. Hill. But there's no communication. There's lack of orders. There are new people leading new regiments, leading new brigades, leading new divisions. And the charge is a disaster. And the Army of the Potomac wins on that July 3rd, 1863. Robert E. Lee must bring his wounded army back to Virginia. But he goes to A.P. Hill. A.P. Hill will bring the army back to Virginia. A.P. Hill will continue to command the Third Corps in 1864. He will fight in the wilderness. He will fight at Cold Harbor. But he is not a well man. All those illnesses early on and the strain of command are taking its toll. And finally, the Confederates are bottled up in Petersburg and Richmond, Virginia. Now in 1865, what happens is that as the Army of the Potomac gets stronger and stronger and stronger, the Army of Northern Virginia gets weaker and weaker and weaker, and so does A.P. Hill. A.P. Hill has to take a leave of absence in January, and he doesn't come back to his army until April 1st, 1865. His papers are still in his pocket. His papers that say he must recover from his illness, but he wanted to be close to Robert E. Lee. Plus, he had his wife with him and his 2 little girls. His wife is 7 months pregnant. Early on that day of April 1st, he will spend 15 hours in the saddle in excruciating pain because of the illnesses going through his body.